The Warren Commission acted in good faith?
No. I think they absolutely conducted a fair and honest investigation to the best of their ability. Unfortunately, the final report was written largely as a brief in behalf of their own position. So when the critics got in and found out that there was contradictory evidence, the brief character of the report undermined their basic judgments.
David Bellin was counsel to the Warren Commission. He is the author of Final Disclosure, subtitled The Full Truth About the Assassination of President Kennedy. How's the idea of a fourth shot strike you?
There was no fourth shot. The physical evidence shows there was no fourth shot. The evidence upon which the fourth shot is supposedly based has been really disproven by a subsequent investigation by the Committee on Ballistic Acoustics of the National Research Council. They not only found there was no scientific basis for a fourth shot, but they found the point at which the fourth shot supposedly occurred was 1 minute after the assassination. And there are a lot of physical attributes which would prove there was no fourth shot. Now, the only place that people saw a gunman actually fire was in the school book depository building, 6th floor window. There are witnesses, as Professor Blakey suggests, who thought they heard shots from different portions of the territory because of the reverberation effect of a plaza surrounded by high buildings. But in truth, there is no physical evidence supporting a fourth shot.
I ask you both, why to this day do you think a good number of Americans continue to speculate about conspiracy and continue to doubt the findings of the Warren Commission report?
My answer is that part of it is the kind of books that they've had to read. The books that they've had to read have been a marshaling of evidence in behalf of one thesis and a failure to deal with the alternative evidence. That's number one. And number two is I don't think most people have actually read the primary documents, the stuff that David worked on or that I worked on. And three, I think a lot of people can't accept, I mean, even if it were true, can't accept the fact that a man like John Kennedy could be brought down by, by a man like Lee Harvey Oswald.
I think I would concur in part with what Bob Blakey says. I think there's another reason also. Every trial lawyer knows that when you have a sudden event with 2 or more witnesses, you're going to get 2 or more different stories. And if you want to pick and choose a snippet here and a snippet there, you can come up with a plausible theory that to the uneducated person might seem correct, although it's wrong. Now, actually, there are most areas, except for the acoustical evidence and except for the conclusion that Jack Ruby may have been conspiratorially involved, Bob Blakey and I agree, and principally the so-called single bullet theory that the bullet that passed through President Kennedy's neck that first struck him struck Governor Connally behind him. But what you will find is on the panel shows and these other books that Bob Blakey refers to, out of 20 doctors who examined these autopsy photographs and x-rays, 19 of whom say conclusively all of the shots came from the rear. The person that's picked to be on television is the 20th, the man who will, I say everyone is out of step but John. And so when you have that kind of a situation, you can understand why people are misled.
You people need controversy, and that's part of the problem.
When you say you people, you're talking about TV people.
The media.
In general.
You need controversy and you need balance. So what happens is you'll present the official position, and then you'll give an alternative. And by giving it the way you do, it appears to be an equipoise. And people then choose based on their preconceptions rather than the evidence.
I'm not going to scold, but I wish you wouldn't so loosely use the term you. If you could have, you lived with this, you studied it, what one question is still unanswered?
The acoustics.
To your mind?
The answer is the acoustics need additional study. David and I, in fact, have agreed that if we could spend more time on the acoustics, that we could verify. What the NSF panel did is they came up with evidence inconsistent with ours, not that refuted it. There is additional evidence in the plaza that's credible.
But by calling into doubt one part of the report, don't you really almost disqualify? No, you don't think so.
Absolutely.
Do you think so?
Well, I think this, I think that Bob Blakey would agree that there is absolutely no valid evidence of a fourth shot but for the acoustic evidence.
No, I don't. There is eyewitness and ear witness testimony in the plaza, some 20 people.
He doesn't seem willing to accept that.
Well, the 20 people did say they heard and saw it from the grassy knoll.
Why isn't that good enough for you?
The basic fact is that all of the physical evidence came from the rear, and the only outside scientific basis for claiming...
But David, you can't say that you have to have physical evidence. Eyewitness testimony is enough.
You'll have to let me finish, Bob. If basically the only people that actually saw a gunman fire saw him from that building, if you go in and you find by that window cartridge cases that match the rifle found in that building, and the rifle in turn matches the bullets found, you say, well, people thought they heard something. That's true.
Did you hear from the same witnesses that his committee heard
and
from?
as a matter of fact, the Warren Commission actually included portions of statements from people that said they thought they heard it coming from the grassy knoll area. But it turned out that the audio recollections of the witnesses were not nearly as accurate as what people saw.
But they were there, and that's the problem. They said there was no credible evidence of two shooters. When you went into the testimony, you found out there were 20 people who say they heard it from the grassy knoll. And they differentiated. They didn't not know. They differentiated between the depository and the grassy knoll.
Am I correct that the House committee found a link between Lee Harvey Oswald and organized crime? Granted, a loose link.
Very loose association. They said no associations, no conspiracy. We found associations, and in light of the Plaza physical and other evidence, we said a likelihood of conspiracy.
Why didn't the Warren Commission cite that association?
The association, if any, was so collateral that there was really no evidence to show any positive association. What we did cite, by the way, was the fact that Oswald was not only the lone gunman who killed President Kennedy, but he was also the lone gunman that killed Officer Tippit. And in my book, Final Disclosure, Bob, let me finish now, that I called the Tippit murder the Rosetta Stone as to why you can be sure beyond a reasonable doubt that Oswald was also not only the murderer of Tippit, but the murderer of Kennedy.
There's also some evidence that there were two people involved in the Walker shooting that they didn't talk about.
The other fact that I think is awfully important, we made a major mistake in the Warren Commission investigation. We had it as a secret investigation. I'm absolutely convinced, Byron, if I can call you Byron,
please,
that if the press, if television, if the newspapers, if the radio would have been allowed to be present at the time the witnesses actually testified, the people that saw the gunman fire, the people that found the cartridge cases, the people that found the gun.
You say that would have satiated television's appetite, or the public's appetite.
Not only would it have
David, what it would have done is it would have put so much evidence, largely uncredible, in the public record that it would have been a disaster.
What it would have done...
We conducted 30 days of public hearings, and those 30 days of public hearings, he conducted one on the Warren Commission, none on the Rockefeller Commission. We conducted 30, and those 30 days did not lay people to rest.
Obviously, we're not going to settle this. Just answer some questions for me in yes/no fashion, if you would. In yes/no fashion, if you would. Did Lee Harvey Oswald kill Jack Kennedy?
Yes.
Did he act alone?
Yes.
Lee Harvey Oswald killed Jack Kennedy?
Absolutely.
Did he act alone?
No.
Professor Blakey, Mr. Bellin, gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you for being here, Byron.
8:22. We're back in a moment after a break. This is Today on NBC. When President Kennedy was killed, more than 1 million Americans wrote and sent letters to the fallen president's widow and her family. Americans of all ages took the time to not only express their sense of grief, but also to tell Mrs. Kennedy what her husband meant to them.
He just wasn't a president. He was someone you felt involved with. I mean, he was out on the lawn playing football with the kids, sailing. He wasn't removed like so many presidents were. You know, he was a person.
As a youngster, Deborah Lynn Dills had worked for the Kennedy campaign and saw him arrive in Dallas that fateful day. She remembers it as a difficult time.
The atmosphere in Texas at the time was, you know, not a Kennedy state, and especially Dallas. And the newspapers and stuff that morning, there was a lot of hate.
The assassination was her first exposure to violence. It was also a blow to her Texas pride. And the only way she thought she could strike back was with her pen.
Dear Mrs. Kennedy, I'm very sorry about your husband's death. I'm also ashamed. When I heard your husband's speech that fatal morning, I was glowing with pride because of the nice things he'd said about Texans. But now I'm ashamed that I am a Texan. You and the children have suffered a great loss, and I feel as if I have too. All my love and best wishes for the future. Love, Deborah Lynn Dills.
Dear Miss